This is the GWM P300 and it's the latest version of the iconic P-Series bakkie. This bakkie features a brand new 2.4-litre turbocharged diesel engine under the bonnet that is mated to a 9-speed automatic transmission. Newly designed exterior elements include the bumper, the silver grille, an electronic sunroof, as well as the roof rails, not to mention these diamond-cut 18-inch alloy rims. Inside, the vehicle has got softer touch materials and updated fascia, as well as updated safety, as well as infotainment technologies. However, we'll jump into all of that a little bit later. The local range of the P300 currently consists of the mid-spec LT and the range-topping LTD version. Now, both vehicles feature the 2.4-litre diesel engine, produces 135 kilowatts and 480 newton meters of torque. Now, specifically in the LT version, the vehicle does come with either the option of a 2 or a 4-wheel drive, whereas the range-topping LTD comes exclusively as the 4-wheel drive. In addition to this, you also have other features which aid better off-roading, because remember, the LTD version of the P300 is in fact quite off-road focused. So in this review, we're going to have an in-depth look at the newly redesigned P300. We're going to have a look inside and out, get a feel of some of the amazing elements, the design, as well as how the vehicle feels now that it has actually been newly re-established by the company. We're going to start at the front here, because that is where majority of the changes in the facelifted P300 have actually been made. The first of these is the bumper. This bumper has actually been lowered a bit to kind of accommodate the newly designed grille as well. Now, the grille itself is actually finished in this silver color, in this silver sort of shadow contrasting color right here, and it doesn't matter what color the vehicle is, this silver color of the grille is maintained across. You also have got a very prominent P-Series logo, inside of which sits the front view camera. The vehicle has got 4 external cameras, by the way. We will get into all of that a little bit later in the video. The headlight shape as well as configuration has been maintained, which I think is perfect, because it was quite a very nice addition even in the P-Series, in the original P-Series bakkie. As far as the front end is concerned, the aesthetic has definitely improved quite a lot, in the sense that you are able to spot an immediate difference between the old P-Series and the new P300. Speaking of which, the naming system has actually changed. The previous one was just called the P-Series, and now this one is now being called the P300. If you think about it, the big daddy to this bakkie is the P500. So the smaller bakkie, which is this, is now being called the P300. So I think a change in the naming system was very much welcome in this instance. One of the most notable additions in the P300 is the incorporation of these 18-inch rims. These are diamond-cut 18-inch alloy rims that are wrapped in these GT Glass tires. 18-inch rims, low profile. Now, if you ever think of taking the P300 off-road, it would be very much advisable to ditch these tires and replace them with more off-road focused tires, because from the feel and touch of them, you can see how easily prone they are to damage, especially by loose rocks and by gravel. Such things you will encounter if you were to take them off-roading. So if you want to take this vehicle off-roading, it would be advisable to leave these in your garage and put rims that would be more suited to actually negotiate those tough terrain. For off-road use, for urban use, they are perfect. They've got this black contrasting P-Series logo at the center cap here, and the overall contrast that they offer to the tire, to the silver on the outside here, is quite nice. It's a very nice aesthetic, and no matter what color you will find the P300 in, this rim will always contrast beautifully. One of the biggest attributes that makes GWM such a desirable company, such a desirable brand to be affiliated with, is how progressive it is, especially on the bakkie front. Now, if you look at this at first glance looks like a standard tailgate, which technically it is. However, if I open it and let it go, the tailgate opens out ever so softly thanks to these struts, which by the way were first seen on the GWM P series Bakkie. It does not necessarily end there, because if you locate this button here and you press the push, it actually deploys out a step. This step allows you to actually gain easy access into the loading bay, which you likely will need to do quite a lot, because this is in fact a vehicle that has been made for loading. So it does make it that much easier and that much more convenient. And one other thing that I absolutely love about the P300 is the fact that the loading bin comes rubberized as standard. Now, if you are a Bakkie owner, you will know how expensive and yet important it is to rubberize your bin, because if you don't rubberize it and use it, there will be a lot of scratches that will be left behind. However, the P300 bypasses that problem and offers rubberizing in the vehicle as standard. I think this is one of the few things that make the P300 GWM brand as a whole quite desirable, because all of the features that come as options, they offer as standard for quite a reasonable price, I can quite add. In fact, to prove how easy it is to open the tailgate and deploy the step, I'm going to use just one hand. On my left hand is my POV camera and this is my free hand. So I'm just going to open the tailgate, let it slide out by itself, and I'm just going to push that and just deploy it all with one hand, and I'm able to actually put my foot there and gain access into the vehicle. That's how easy this is. Now putting it back is just as simple. You just lift it, you push it in, lock it in place, and that's it. It's all gone. So it's quite an easy and convenient feature to have in a Bakkie. When I started this review, the first thing I mentioned to you was that the vehicle has got a 2.4 liter turbo diesel engine, and that is important for multiple reasons. Chief among those reasons is the fact that this being a Bakkie, it needs to have ample pulling power and pulling force, and that can only be provided optimally by a diesel engine, specifically this particular 2.4 diesel engine. This, by the way, is the same engine that sees service on the current diesel version of the tank, so the company does have a lot of confidence in this particular engine. Now remember, the LT does have two versions, and there's a four-wheel drive version and there's a two-wheel drive version. This particular one is the four-wheel drive version. It's got the 4x4 system. There is a cheaper two-wheel drive version, and then of course the LTD, the range topping LTD, comes exclusively with the four-wheel drive drivetrain. Now GWM have announced that later in the year they will continue to add two more versions, two lower spec models to the LT and the LTD. These are the LS and the SX. Now the LS is a lower spec to the LT in the sense that there's fewer features, there's fewer luxurious features, there's fewer comfort features. By extension, it's going to be cheaper to buy. Now the SX is going to be basically a workhorse. It's going to be a workhorse. It's going to be equivalent to the GWM Steed in the sense that it's going to be an exclusive workhorse. Now that one, the SX, is going to include the same diesel engine that you find in the current P series Bakkie, the 2-liter engine. Now from the SX all the way through to the LTD, you're going to find the 2.4-liter engine, 135 kilowatts, 480 newton meters of torque. Very capable engine indeed. The one thing that GWM have never been shy about is the liberal use of leather inside of their vehicles, and that story goes on here in the P300. As I sit here, the first thing that I see when I look around are swathers and swathers of leather. They've actually gone above and beyond with the P300, because at the front of the dashboard here, at the very top of the dashboard and the bottom here, you have got this beautiful swath of leather that stretches all the way from the steering through to the passenger side. Above the dashboard, you also find the same thing here as well. On the door panel, there is a lot of leather. On the door handle, the door grip, you find a lot of leather, which is, by the way, double staged here as well. The steering wheel is also closed in leather. This center console cover is all leather. This side, the side of the console that encapsulates the gear lever and all the relevant controls, is also leather. There's been liberal use of leather in this interior. The seats are, of course, leather, and not just leather, but they are actually heated seats, so they are perforated, so that makes definitely for a nice addition. Now at this point, I should remind you that GWM with the P series, they wanted to introduce that sensation of comfort and luxury, SUV like comfort and luxury. So building on that, they've then increased the amounts of leather and comfort features in the P300. Now these seats here, from top to bottom, they are perforated leather. You get this all black leather. It's not contrasted by any stitching. It's perforated. It's actually heated here as well. Now heated and cooled you will find in the P500, but the P300 just makes do with only the heated function. So all beautiful leather, even the steering wheel, the sides of the door, and every part that you can basically think of is made of leather. Now there are bits of hard plastic here and there, as you will find in any vehicle, but what's important with this interior is that the most visible parts are made of leather, and that is what, in my opinion, counts a lot, because as a passenger, as a driver, you want to see as much leather as you can, and they've done just that. They actually put leather on the most visible parts of the vehicle. Now apart from that, the vehicle does have other interesting elements in the dashboard right here. Now at the front, in front of the passenger right here, you've got this artwork, which is almost an outline of the P300. It's quite a very nice thing to look at. It's made like of silver hard plastic, but you wouldn't really say it's hard plastic. It's a nice hard material, and it's got these like little slanting lines, and it's got these contrasting green lines that run across the dashboard, and you've got this air vent here, quite a small air vent, but it actually works very nicely, and you've got another two air vents that occur underneath that center screen right here. Now the rest of the dashboard is very functional in the sense that for the passenger side, there's a storage compartment. Like, it's not a closable one, but it is nonetheless a storage compartment that would allow the passenger to store little things like pens and pencils and maybe bits of coins should they need to use that. At the center of the dashboard, you have got this screen right here, which feeds multiple things, including your camera system and your multimedia system. We'll get into that a little bit later. Underneath the screen, you've got these multiple features, most of which are for the climate control system, but you do also have features like the hazard lights, hill descent control, heated seats, air recycling, and the ability to turn the system on and off. What interests me the most, however, is the center console of the P300. I feel like it's just becoming more and more functional with each version of a new GWM that comes in the market. Take, for example, the fact that there are 3 charging stations on this center console. There's a wireless charging station to put your phone on, and then on the left of that, you've got a USB-C charging station as well as a USB-A charging station. Now on the right, you have got a 12-volt power outlet, which in other vehicles would be used as a cigarette lighter. However, here they've reserved that as a power outlet for an extra device, something like maybe a dash cam or whatever other device that you might need to add in the vehicle. And speaking of dash cams, by the way, there is a USB slot right here that allows for you to connect your dash cam, so there won't even be a need to connect a dash cam at the bottom here. The bottom here is exclusively reserved for electronics. Dash cam, you can just use that USB slot to connect that up here. Now back to the center console. The middle part of the center console also features the pistol grip shift lever, which has been taken directly from the tank and into the P300. Now the nice thing about this is the fact that the P300 is actually made to look like a smaller P500, which in my opinion is a nice thing, because you need to establish a hierarchy in such a way that the P500 is the top bakkie for GWM and the P300 is lesser to that. In any case, the pistol grip shift lever has been taken directly from the tank and into the P300. It works in exactly the same way. It looks a little bit smaller, but it functions the exact same way. On either side of the pistol grip shifter, you've got a couple of buttons. Now, depending on the spec level of the vehicle, some buttons will be there and some buttons will not be there. I'll make you an example. At the left here, you've got a low range button and a diff lock button. Now, these two buttons will not necessarily be on the two-wheel drive version, because a two-wheel drive version is not going to have low range. However, a four-wheel drive version is, and a two-wheel drive version might not necessarily have a rear diff lock button. So depending on the spec level, you've got different features. There are three buttons that read 12V1, 12V2 and 12V3. Now, upon minor research, I found that these buttons are actually to turn on and off these charging stations. Now, I'm not certain why you would want to turn on and off a charging station in a vehicle, but nonetheless they are there, and it would be preferable to keep them on just to avoid silly mistakes like not charging your devices when you need to. Other features include an auto start stop, an electronic parking brake, and you've got this mode control here. Now, this mode control controls all of your driving modes that you might want to have. You've got snow mode, you've got gravel mode, rock climbing, all of those things. There's ton of modes in this vehicle that you've got access to as you need to use the vehicle. Shifting our attention to the steering wheel itself, the first vehicle that this steering wheel reminds me of is the Tank 300. The shape of the steering wheel definitely reminds me of the Tank 300. On the left, you've got your multimedia controls, your radio controls, your phone controls. On the right, you've got your cruise controls button, your voice activation, all of that stuff. And then at the back of the steering wheel here, you've got these pedal shifters, which for a diesel vehicle might be a bit of an overkill, but nonetheless they look very beautiful and they are very much a welcome addition. The cruise control has got a separate stock, which is actually a very nice addition, I must say, in the vehicle, because sometimes controlling your cruise control with buttons can be a little bit finicky, so it's not a very nice thing. So the cruise control here is on a separate stock, and that is actually a very nice thing to have. Now, if I turn the vehicle on, and I can just do that by tapping twice, the first thing that I get is shifting my attention, by the way, to the screen immediately behind the steering wheel. Now, I have never in any other vehicle seen such a unique screen before, because this screen, in as much as it's a screen, it's also got separate icons on either side of it. Now, at the center, it's a screen that displays me things like your revs per minute on the left, the speedometer on the right, the speed limit, what gear I'm on, what mode I'm on, whether or not I'm connected to the phone, and what doors are open. So it's a very functional screen. It displays a lot of information. However, on either side of the screen, you've got these warning lights, which are always displayed. And now the warning lights don't need for the screen to be on to function, and that is what I like the most about this. One of my biggest complaints about the P500 is the fact that every electronic, every part of the instrument cluster depended on the screen being on. Now, this time around, the screen doesn't necessarily need to be on in order for you to be able to read out certain warning lights on the vehicle. So it is quite a pretty nice addition. Now, moving over to the center screen right here. The center screen is a very nicely, decently sized screen. Now, GWM is renowned for its humongous screens. I think with the P300, they've done a very good job with maintaining a decently sized screen. Very good resolution, very nice screen indeed. Now, the first thing about this screen is that it supports Apple CarPlay as well as Android Auto. There are also a multitude of other features that you can access with the vehicle screen, including the vehicle settings, things like the camera, camera system, the Bluetooth, radio, all of that stuff, navigation, maps, you name it, the list literally is endless. The camera system in the P300 is quite a nice one. It's slightly updated and updated to the favor of the driver, because when I press the camera button, the first thing that I see is the rear view on the left. On the right, I see a top view of the vehicle. Now, the first immediate change that you will notice if you've been in previous GWM vehicles is the fact that they no longer use an entire vehicle in the animation. Rather, they use 4 wheels just to denote the position of the vehicle, which I think is a very much welcome addition. Now, if I press at the top here, I get a fisheye view of the rear view. This is extremely helpful when reversing, because you can see like from a wider angle. You can actually see from a wider angle where you are reversing, how far obstacles are, and all of that stuff. Now, the P500 would generally give you even a measure of how far you are from an obstacle, which I think is a bit of an overkill, but they have not done that here, thankfully, because we can still drive. We just need to be aided by cameras. However, we can still drive. Moving down to car wash mode, there's a car wash mode that just, it's a basic view, really shows the top view of the vehicle and how it will look driving through a car wash. You've got a couple of settings right here. Now, I must say, this camera, it's actually quite a simple camera in the sense that it's not too complicated. Yes, you still have got that amazing 360 view. You can see from the front of the vehicle, from the rear, from the sides, and all of that stuff. There's a lot of views you can view, but apart from that, they have not overkilled the camera system in the sense that they've just incorporated what you will need to use as a driver. Because in previous GWMs, especially the tank models of the GWMs, they've added a lot of features which were quite unnecessary and made it a very overwhelming system to use. So the screen on itself has got a very beautiful resolution. Like I said, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, you've got a couple of vehicle settings. You can turn on or off particular settings here. You've got your display control, your personalization, the system upgrades, all of that stuff. It works pretty much like a smartphone, really. It's a very nice system. Like I said, it's pretty much a no-nonsense system. The thing about these cars, and I'm talking about SUVs and double cabs, is that they are not just about driver and front passenger comfort. They're also about rear passenger comfort, which is why the first thing that I can tell you with confidence sitting at the back here is how comfortable, how much there is back here. Now, the first thing, actually one of the things that I notice is that I'm sitting on a much higher level at the back than I was at the front. So the front is a little bit lower than the back. The back is a little bit higher, but still it doesn't compromise headroom, it doesn't compromise shoulder room, it doesn't even compromise leg room for that matter. I can sit back, I can kick back, and I can just relax. The functions that are at the front are more or less available at the back. For example, I've got the climate control system, dual vent system here. I've got a USB-A system for charging of the rear passengers. So in total, this vehicle has got 5 charging stations for both front and the rear occupants, which is quite a lot, because traveling, the one thing you want to have is the security that you will have a charging station on your vehicle. Now, the most interesting thing, which I think GWM needs to kind of look at and possibly revise, is the fact that the center armrest is just that. It's a center armrest. There's no mug holders. In fact, there's no mug holders for the rear occupants. I've looked all around. Well, technically there are mug holders on the sides of the doors, but that's not a very nice place to put a mug holder, because you don't want to put something on the same level as your shoes where dirt and germs could potentially infiltrate. So I really feel that GWM could have done better by incorporating a mug holder as they do with other vehicles that they have. But as an armrest, I guess it functions just normally, in the sense that when you don't have a middle occupant, you can just pop this thing down and you are able to rest. However, armrests, they tend to be a little bit more functional than that. For example, in the P500, which is right next to me, by the way, you've got a wireless charging on the rear armrest, but here you don't have that. However, I still would have liked to have a dual mark holder system, I think GWM, they might need to have a second look at that. Now, as far as the seat quality is concerned, you've got the same kind of leather quality at the back as you do at the front, perforated leather seats. These though are not heated like the ones at the front. They are just standard leather seats. However, they still look very beautiful. 60-40 split allow you access into the rear cabin to get a hold of things like fire extinguishers, jacks, implements and the like. And I mean, the same comfort that you find at the front, you find at the back. You've got these leather panels here in these seats. You've got all of this quality, all of this finish, all of this beautiful leather finish right here. You've got these rear pockets at the driver and the passenger seats. So sitting at the back here, I am very comfortable, very comfortable indeed. I am admittedly restricted in my car reviews in the sense that I cannot take my vehicles and actually drive them on the street, because these are actual vehicles that are being sold and they are not loan units. However, from what I've seen and experienced with the GWM P300, it's definitely a continuous improvement. And if you think about the fact that the P series, the original P series, was not bad to begin with, the fact that this is an improvement over there shows the linear sort of trajectory that GWM is taking in the betterment of the quality of their vehicle. And I'm not just talking about interiors, I'm talking about engine, suspension, ride quality, and the overall reliability and comfort of the vehicle. So that definitely does add hope in the future of GWM, the P series Bakkie in the country. And think about the fact that this is a very competitively priced. Even the most expensive GWM is still relatively competitively priced in the market. If you think about the fact that there are Bakkies that sell well over $1 million currently. So that is one of the huge selling points of this vehicle. It will offer you the same functionality, the same practicality at almost half the price that you would get a high-end or a top-end Bakkie, really. And the GWM P series is definitely one of the most amazing vehicles that you can find on the market today. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this video review as much as I've enjoyed filming it for you, and I hope that you guys will stay tuned, subscribe, like, comment, share, because there is a ton more videos of this nature coming your way. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a good one.